sore?
I'm very sore. I've thought I broke my foot, but I broke the plate that's in my foot. So now they've got me in one of those stupid boots. I'm sorry. It's just I'm so upset. But I can't get out of bed. It takes me forever just to walk from the bedroom to here. So I got to take a couple pills. I'll be fine.
Pam, you cracked me up.
Thank you.
We saw your boot. We saw your boot, Pam.
Did you?
Mhm.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Sorry, just as we started the recording, I was hoping to get that in before the recording, but carry on, Michelle.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Basically, today is just about working on part 4. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
To chime in quickly, I realized that I hadn't sent you the summary of part 4, which I completed, Michelle. That would be in your inbox. I just sent it.
I just saw that, Ty. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, so here we are. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at it and peruse it?
Sorry, I didn't. I couldn't. I couldn't get out of bed. But I will look at it, I promise.
I myself, I've had a look through it, Michelle, and a lot of that was started the day after we discussed part 4 on what expropriation was about and giving examples and so forth. So that was helpful in doing the summary. And my only edit that I made is down below. It was we had a discussion about perceived value versus market share value. And so I sought out some definitions for that, and those are included. I'm not sure if I tagged myself properly, the Google Docs. I may not have, you might not see a bubble beside my edit, but it's dark orange, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to send a quick little message to David and remind him that there's a meeting today.
He's in training, so he's already given his, well, he didn't give his regrets for this, but he gave his regrets for our training tomorrow and Thursday. He's in the incident command training for the evacuation program.
Okay. Yeah, that works. Okay. All right.
And
So,
same with Sharina, sorry. Sharina also.
yeah, I knew Sharina was in there. Okay, so expropriation.
So for Terry Fletcher's understanding, I'm working within my partner's Gmail there, so I'm Dawn. And the track change.
Just so everyone's aware, when we're going through and doing the editing, what we've been doing was basically either highlighting whatever editing that you've done and then changing the color of your font, or as Tess suggested, using over here the suggesting mode. Can everyone see that up in the top right hand corner? So there's editing, suggesting, and viewing. If you do the suggesting right here, whenever you add something in to a spot, it creates this little kind of bubble, and over here it kind of like shows what changes you've made. This is probably the best possible way of doing it, because then we can very quickly see who did something and also agree or disagree to it. But nobody should be agreeing or disagreeing to anything quite yet until we're gone through and kind of did agree to all of the thing, not all of it.
Thanks for that, because I was wondering who Dawn was.
Okay, so 16.1, I see some changes here, basically just the name. I think these are all the change. Oh no, these are David's changes. Okay. Don't put your changes. Okay. So it doesn't appear to be much different than it already was. The Missanabie Cree First Nation may expropriate an interest or license in Missanabie Cree First Nation land, provided that it has made a good faith effort to acquire by mutual agreement the interest or license. That's pretty straightforward. Is there any comments about this piece? Move on to 6.2.
I do have a comment, but my comment's more general than it is about this. Just because I didn't have time to go through this document yet, so I don't want to, like, by silence, I don't want to say that it's an agreeable thing. And I know that we're just combing through it at this point. But once, like, I think that that's a pretty important thing that we include in here, like expropriation. That's like taking someone's land away from them. Right. So I think we need to revisit that at a later point in time.
Yeah, it definitely needs to be super detailed and super, line for line and very expressive, so that, you know, it's understanded by all. So the wording that we choose for that, yeah, because right there it's so generally vague as to what can happen, right?
Well, it does get into more details. For context, Terry, we're working from a template of the provided by First Nation Lands Management Resource Center. And it's, as Michelle has described it, you know, after 120 communities have written these, it's the filtered version of the best of the best.
Yeah, they did explain that to us at
Okay,
the
good.
elders presentation,
Oh, good.
and just letting you know that I did attend that. I
Excellent.
understand that, but I just wanted to say that
It's
it's a
true,
pretty
yeah.
serious thing, and I just didn't want it to pass without, like, I realize that we're going to get into more detail, and that's good. But
Yes.
I just needed to say that we do need to make sure that we
Very-
fine comb this.
Yes, I
good.
totally agree. And it does talk about if you're going to do that, how it's done. There's going to be respectful notice, conversation, and then compensation, right? There's a compensatory package that comes with that. And it's very similar to when they decide to put a highway through your subdivision, you know, you're amply compensated should the band decide that they need it for community interests.
Gotcha.
Might I also chime in, regardless of, like, there's obviously an implication right now with members who are involved with occupying some certain land. So the nature of this area and this part 4, definitely, you know, we have an actual present moment example, you know, so we can always use that as a reference, you know. However, this hasn't been incorporated. Further to that idea is when we get past the land code after ratification and so forth, our land development, land planning process will have to be, you know, engineered and structured in a way for long-term avoidance of such a detail as this. So wherever we decide in our capital planning study to actually provide homes and so forth, it's going to have to be a carefully thought out process to avoid such a situation at any time and for future generations. So these would be things considered at that next level of planning. Rich.
Thank you, Ty. Okay, so we'll move on to 16.2. Rights and interests that may be expropriated. An interest or license in Missanabie Cree First Nation land or in any building or other structure on that land may only be expropriated by Missanabie Cree First Nation in accordance with the framework agreement and any land law enacted for the purpose of establishing the rights and procedures for community expropriation. So the only changes are basically just the name right there. I'm noticing a doubling of the name here. I'm not quite sure why that is.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I was trying to understand that.
Yeah, I think I know what happened is that I was adding in Missanabie Cree, and then at our last meeting, we decided to do a find replace. So anywhere where I had already added it, and then we did, yeah,
Yeah,
so now,
yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
Okay.
so it should only
So
be for this
I'm just-
part anyway.
if I reject this suggestion, does
Yeah.
anyone have a problem if I try this? Okay, I got rid of it. Okay. Just to get rid of the confusion.
Do we have to have,
This one is
so
correct.
do we have to have the word First Nation there? If we're talking, this is our document, we're talking Missanabie Cree, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm just saying,
We're
it's just a
even-
suggestion to
yeah.
shorten the document a little bit,
Yeah.
taking out words here and there.
Yeah, I mean, it could be MCFN, but it's nice to see Missanabie Cree. And rather than an acronym, like, we could do acronym, but I feel.
Yeah, maybe not the acronym, but I mean, I just didn't know that we need the actual First Nation part there all the time
Yeah.
throughout
Yes.
the document.
Good point.
Agreed. Yeah, I noticed that too.
So you could do that in your terms, right?
Yes.
That you
Yeah.
know, whenever you state this, that's what it means.
Yes, there's already in the definitions for that when it comes to Missanabie Cree First Nation. Okay. Is there any comments or questions about this particular piece here, 16.2? I believe basically the idea is as long as Missanabie Cree First Nation is working within the framework agreement itself and any land laws that it's created, that it is legally allowed to expropriate building or structure or land, building or structure. If Missanabie Cree First Nation feels that it needs to use it for some reason.
Yeah, that's straightforward. They're gonna follow the procedure that we're putting in place, so.
Okay, so community purposes, 16.3. A community expropriation shall only be made for necessary community works and other Missanabie Cree First Nation purposes, including a fire hall, sewage or water treatment facility, community center, public works, utilities, roads, schools, daycare facility, hospitals, healthcare facility, and retirement home. I'd like to make a suggestion for 16.3, which is to include right around here. Including but not limited to, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Because there something could have to do with Missanabie Cree and it being needed for something or whatever, but yeah.
Well, I'll just add that in as a suggestion. Is there any other suggestions about this piece right here? Comments, questions? Okay, moving on to what? 16.4, expropriation land laws. Before proceeding to make any community expropriations in accordance with this land code and the framework agreement, council shall enact a land law respecting to the rights and procedures for community expropriations, including provisions respecting taking of possession of the interest or license, transfer of the interest or license, notice of expropriation, and the service of the notice of expropriation, entitlement to compensation, determination of the amount of compensation, and the method of payment of compensation. I definitely agree with the deleting spaces here. Is there any comments or questions about this piece here?
Yeah, just trying to understand the wording a little more there.
So from what I gather here, before anything is done, as long as it's within the legal standards of the land code and the framework agreement, council shall enact a law, land law. So basically, chief and council will not be allowed to do any type of community expropriation until a land law is created that includes these particular items in it. So there would have to be a land law created that includes explanation of how taking a possession of that interest or license or the transfer of it, what kind of notice that they are going to have to be required to give. Entitlement, yeah, who requires being compensated, about how much that's going to be compensated, and how they're, the methodology. That's what I understand from this.
Yeah, it's just basically their procedure before they start. Who are we dealing with? What are they gonna get? What are we gonna offer? Basically, that's what that's just
Yeah.
get down to. Okay.
But this piece particularly says that chief and council is not allowed to do that until there's a land law created for it, basically, so that they can't just go ahead and do an expropriation without following some sort of guideline or law, I believe.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's how I interpret it as well. And in order for that land law to be enacted, it would,
Wasn't that what we're doing? This is kind of a weird,
so the best way to
kind of a weird
understand it,
one.
yeah, best way to understand it, Brad, is that this is the framework. We're in, the detailed land code, like the detailed laws and bylaws are, and whereby the band is empowered to create those laws. So the land code is like that overarching enabling piece of legislation.
Yeah. So
May I-
it's funny because it seems like then they could just put a law in place right when they want to do something.
Well, the law would still need to be vetted through the community, right? Let's look at how this framework talks about the
Yeah.
establishment, development, and of the laws therein, right? There's certain things in this framework, this overarching document that will dictate certain aspects, right? Like you still have to abide by the First Nation Land Management Act, for example. That's one of the first rules of the playbook, so to speak, is by signing on to this agreement, you first must abide by the act. And then therein the code is developed. And then from that, the smaller laws and bylaws are developed.
Carrie, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, so how I'm reading is that the council is going to enact these land laws, and it's going to be a separate document. So when is that going to be happening?
It could happen in tandem with the land code being written, but it doesn't have to be.
Because then in there, they would be writing specific to the taking, they'll be enacting a land law pre-written that tackles A, the taking of possession of the interest or license, B, C, and D, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So they won't be able to just come across a situation and then enact a law. So that's what we need to avoid.
That's what I was thinking. By reading this, I was seeing that they were able to do that.
Gotcha.
I didn't want that to be the case. Thank you, Terry, for bringing that back up again.
No worries.
Could you clarify the nature of your concern?
Who are you asking? Brad or me?
Either one of you, you specifically, because you're speaking to it. So,
Okay, I'm not, so my concern, it's not a concern. I'm giving my input about
yes,
how, if I'm asking a question about how council will enact their land laws. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm asking if that's going to be a separate document pertaining to each individual item that you have listed. And I used an example of A, B, C, D.
yes.
And that's all I can read right now.
Okay. So, I think I understand what you're asking. The way I was able to understand it is the land code itself is like the bare bones framework for which land laws and other laws that will be created will fit into. So the land code is kind of like the overarching framework for these laws, such as like this particular law here is basically stating that council will be creating land laws, including these items, like a particular law for expropriation. When I was looking through other First Nations laws, we were discussing that at the elders meeting about comparing different laws. I found that they had their land codes, but they also had quite a few specific land laws, including things like expropriation and marital land interests. So
Hopefully we don't have to come to using this part of anything. But yeah, this is definitely something hard to work on, this piece right here, because it's kind of like vague, because it just seems that the council will still be able to do what they want to do by looking at what this is saying to me. If there's, okay, we got to put something in place to get those people moved, so they're going to make a law to do it.
mhm.
Right.
I'm just gonna make a note of that, Brad. Hold on a
Yeah,
second.
and I'll add to that, because that's all I'm saying is that these will be so if the council enacts a land law
It makes no sense.
pertaining to the taking of possession of the interest or license, then that will
Specific.
be a pre-made land law. It won't just be made at the time of
General for
situation.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
That's what we're trying to say. I
Yeah,
think
Yes.
it's-
Absolutely. Yes.
that's what yeah, perfect. Glad we're all here to talk about it.
Mhm. So what I'm hearing is definitely want to have something put in place to protect the community at large when it comes to issues like this, so that nothing inappropriate or unfair is being done.
But like, I'll give you an example. Okay, so in number C, notice of expropriation and service of the notice of expropriation. Okay,
Mhm.
so all I'm saying is that, okay, so council will already have that land law written so that they can enact it. So they can take it and use it in that particular situation, because they're it's gonna say, we give you 6 months notice of expropriation. And it's already in there that's the law that they're going to enact, that says the notice is going to be 6 months.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Something like that. That's just for example.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's
Okay.
what I understand that this is saying, basically. Yeah. Yeah, there should be a standing law created that is encompassing for everyone at all times. Okay. I made some notes about that one. 16.5, public report. Before, hold on. Before Missanabie Cree First Nation expropriates an interest or license, it shall make a public report on the reasons justifying the expropriation. Is there any thoughts on this one?
No, it's straightforward. I guess it's just to let the community and everybody else know about what they're doing and what's happening there. I don't see any, that's straightforward.
Member notifications, 16.6. In the case of an expropriation of a member's interest in Missanabie Cree First Nation land, the affected member or members shall receive notification of the expropriation within a reasonable time prior to the release of the public report.
Again, yeah, it makes sense. They're gonna definitely be speaking to the direct party first before they go public with anything to, you know, stop any of that.
Rights that may not be expropriated, 16.7. In accordance with the clause 17.6 of the Framework Agreement, an interest of Canada or the province of, province okay, sorry, that did not make sense to me. An interest of Canada or the province in Missanabie Cree First Nation land is not subject to expropriation by the Missanabie Cree First Nation. So I believe what this means is basically Missanabie Cree is not allowed to expropriate Canadian or Ontario land itself.
I was just thinking maybe just switch those two words around, Canada and province. And it might just, it seems a little funny written in that. So I would say province or in Canada, Missanabie Cree. I don't know. It just seems, it's kind of funny there. Just weird wording.
Interest of the province or Canada.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a funny wording because then it goes right to Missanabie Cree, the province in Missanabie Cree. Sounds funny, looks funny.
You might want to just like add Ontario, the province of Ontario in Missanabie Cree First Nation land.
There you go. Maybe we don't even have to write province if we write Ontario, Canada, Missanabie Cree.
Well, I do believe that both should be represented because one's provincial, one's federal, and both own land. And this is basically saying that, why? Okay, that's because I'm suggesting. That is not what I wanted to do here. I don't know how to undo that. Hold on.
Just make a suggestion to undo it
There we go.
at a later point. And
I
add
just
Ontario.
I just went back. I'm gonna write it down rather than change it right now. Okay. 17. Change. Okay. I will do this after. Okay, so moving on to 16.8, compensation for the rights and interests. Missanabie Cree First Nation shall, in accordance with its land laws and the framework agreement, A, serve reasonable notice of the expropriation on each affected holder of the interest or license to be expropriated, and B, pay fair and a reasonable compensation to the holders of the interest or license being expropriated. I think my only question for this one, and I'm sure it'll be answered, is what is pay fair and reasonable compensation to the holders of the interest or license being expropriated?
To me, it sounds like they're just going to give you one price and that's it. There's no discussion about it. I think that they should have a discussion with the person that owns the lot and see how much they think it's worth.
And again, this will all go back to our
That actually-
the document on like pricing now, market price, and then value price and such like that. So
Right.
that this goes back to another document basically, or another part, which they have to follow before they even get to this, right?
Okay.
Oh, compensation calculations, look at that. 16.9, in accordance with clause 17.4 of the framework agreement, Missanabie Cree First Nation shall calculate the total value of the compensation under the section based on the heads of the compensation set out in the Expropriation Act of Canada.
Yeah, right after this meeting, I took a survey, and I wish I could remember from whom, but it was all with regards to this market value. And gosh, I wish I could remember who it was. It was a survey basically saying we're building a toolkit to help people understand how this occurs. Maybe I'll try to Google it right now, or Google it. I'll try to search my inbox and find it for you.
I was just making a note to look up clause 17.4 of the framework agreement and to also look up the Expropriation Act in order to get that answer of compensation calculations.
So we
will-
talked about that last time, Michelle, our last
Yep.
meeting. And I can pull it up. Let me just find the framework agreement here, or the act that we referenced.
Does anybody know how large is the Expropriation Act? Like,
So here it is. Well, no, this is the text of the framework agreement on First Nation land management. So, and we talked about this last time, but we can talk about it again. 17.4. It says, a First Nation that expropriates an interest or land right in First Nation land will give fair compensation based on the heads of compensation set out in the Expropriation Act. So therein, when we sign on to these, we signed on to the framework agreement, we signed on to the framework, the First Nation Land Management Act, and then therein the Expiration Act, the Federal Expiration Act of Canada. So if we go to the Expiration Act of Canada, it'll probably talk about that. I mean, we know it's going to be more than fair, because otherwise there would be a million lawsuits about it.
sure, there probably still was a million lawsuits about it.
Yeah.
Well, if anyone feels that it's necessary, I could go and find that information about the Expropriation Act and talk about it next meeting.
Sure, I'm just looking it up now. I don't know why they have, looks like they have almost provincial, where it says it's
Yeah,
federal.
so I'm wondering, so the Expropriation Act of Canada, that obviously still pertains to our First Nation. We don't have a something to deal with our own lands rather than, a Canada document, a government document that's explaining expropriation,
Well, this particular clause right here, 16.9, is the clause that points towards how are you going to figure out where the compensation, like what the compensation calculations are. And this is
Yeah.
stating to look to the Expropriation Act.
Okay, so it's
Now,
just giving you a
I'm-
base, okay.
Yeah, I'm not
I thought-
sure. I'm not sure about the legalities of it, but I'm pretty sure that if Missanabie Cree had its own like expropriation law that set out this properly and it was agreed upon in some way,
It'll
that
be
it could
close to
be,
this.
it could be switched
Mhm.
out. I'm
Yeah.
not, I don't know about that though, because I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, and the fact that if you sign on to the agreement, there's probably certain things when the First Nation signed on to
Mhm.
that agreement, there are probably certain things therein that you're also signing on to, which I would believe is.
Well, as it was shown
Okay.
in the framework agreement itself points towards the Expropriation Act. So it says in accordance with the framework agreement, and the framework agreement says you have to go to the Expropriation Act. So
And there's a reason for that.
yeah, it
Because-
makes sense that that would be, that it couldn't be changed.
Yeah, I know what it's doing. They're sending you there to give you your guide and to form your calculation and what's used in pertaining to all that. And so I was just basically, yeah, so it's a guide. So we can come up, like, everything is going to be different. Every situation is going to be different. So there's going to be all kinds of different aspects that are in each situation that this comes about to. So it's going to be work every time to figure out, where the land is, what the land is, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I understand now, and I agree. It's just, yeah, it's a frame to get us to that point of
Yeah.
making a correct or a decision on compensation that's fair.
Right. Right. Something that's transgressed time and has been the least path of resistance for both parties to come to compromise. I'm seeing here in the Expropriation Act, it's referring to a few of the First Nations who have gotten their own constitution and saying in that they are exempt. So, and that's, first we need our land code. First, there needs to be reserve creation, and who knows, down the way in 7 generations, it could be that Missanabie Cree gets its own constitution, and then it would be outside of this framework that.
Yeah, I get it. It's like
Mhm.
not reinventing the wheel. This is already done for us. It gives us a way of producing what we need to do without having to come up with our own entire act.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
pretty much.
And this is where it's about community, in the interests of the community, the best interests of the community. And that's why when I said we're going to have a lawyer will have to review this on behalf of Missanabie Cree First Nation for in the interest of community as opposed to individual rights and interests. And that's where when we were going through some of the definitions and it was saying we wanted to, a few of the members on the committee wanted to put in, in no way would you transgress the rights and freedoms of an individual. I was like, well, I don't know if that can be, if that can be, because this is a community land code. This is about the establishment of a community, which means about the greater good of the community. So there would be times where potentially they need to expropriate. And if they do, this is going to be the process. Duly compensated, whatever, so we're reading it now to understand it. But it's a land code for community, not individual rights.
Carrie, I saw your hand was up earlier. Did you want to say
Yeah, it's
something?
still up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I don't always see the hand up feature. I
Okay.
get like a little pop-up, but if I miss it, please feel free to just say something.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I think that I hear that you've brought up the Expropriation Act prior to this meeting. So I think that, but I hear also that there's a lot of confusion regarding it. And so because this is a document that we're exploring right now, and we might want to be signatories to this. That's what I understand, and that we were told that we are going, that's why we're reviewing it and creating it to make it fit to Missanabie Cree. So I think that we need, as you suggested, Michelle, I do believe that we should revisit the Expropriation Act just to glimpse over it and maybe see if it is fitting for us, and that it does cover our what we think that it will be valuable to Missanabie Cree First Nation in this document.
Right. I'm just downloading it to PDF, and I'm going to send it by email to the committee, to the subcommittee, so you can have a look. So when we were referencing the framework agreement. So there's this whole like layers of an onion, right? When you sign on to the agreement, you sign on to the First Nation Lands Management Act, which I guess maybe we should also be reviewing.
Mhm.
And then the framework agreement, the text of the framework agreement, I guess is like being in, and that's where we had 17.4 talks about expropriation, and that's where it referenced the Federal Expropriation Act. So I'll send that out right now.
Yeah, I have a package of things that I'm gonna be sending out pretty soon. I've been gathering them all pretty much just the last couple days. This last few weeks have been crazy. But I do have to say that we've gotten a lot done too. So great job. Okay, so I made a note about that, and yes, I'm definitely going to visit the Expropriation Act, and at least for this particular clause, pull out the compensation, well, the heads of compensation that it comments on right here. And I'll bring that to next meeting. And yes, please, everyone, feel free to check it out too, so that we can all discuss it. So we'll go to market value, 16.10. The market value of an expropriated interest or license is equal to the amount that would have been paid for the interest or license if it had been sold by a willing seller to a willing buyer under no duress. Ty, I remember the elders bringing this up. I'm just gonna make this a little bigger. Hold on. It's hard to read. Still there, Ty?
Yeah, I'm here listening. What were you referencing of the elders meeting? Sorry.
So we were talking, well, I just went through 16.10, market value of an expropriated interest or license. And your section right here, perceived value consideration. So I remember the conversation at the elders meeting was about how to figure out this market value and that not everything's always equal. So did you want to speak to what you added here? And maybe we can all discuss afterwards whether or not this should be included somehow.
Right. Well, in the discussion, even before the elders meeting, when we discussed this here, it's quite difficult to just say, well, the market value, because the taxes, are only $200 a year up there. Market value is very much presented with the cost of the development plus a comparable tax bracket. When unnecessarily that doesn't actually reflect what the value of it is. We could have a healing lodge, for instance, in the middle of nowhere, and the value to that to our people is obviously more valuable than monetary. So there's a perceived value that goes on with that. If we were to talk about actual property sale, for instance, the piece of property I bought up in Missanabie, I've been offered upwards of $80,000 to $100,000 for it, yet the market share value is actually quite poor, and I can't even use it as collateral with the banking institutions. So perceived value definitely becomes an issue. The information I provided here is a summation, two definitions kind of broken down based on more like real estate. This is kind of where my search went to. I visited a few different sites, and these two definitions were pretty much the summation of how perceived value has a lot to do with positive real estate, like people that are in business as real estate brokers and so forth. It's in their best interest to at least acknowledge perceived value. If maybe I'll just read it for everybody's consideration. Perceived value, as the term suggests, is mostly about perception. It has little to do with the objective reality. It is a consumer's personal opinion about a particular product's value. This perceived value is arrived at by a customer based on how well he or she thinks the product can meet their needs or requirements. The perceived value is very different from the actual value of a product. The perceived value is what a consumer believes the product is worth. The perception is formed by opinions of the market and by the benefits that the consumer expects to receive if he or she makes a purchase. The product may be sold for more than what it costs to manufacture because of the perception of the customer to the customer. In some cases, the perception of the value may be less than what the actual value of the product is. The second last line, the product may be sold for more than what it costs to manufacture because of the perception of the customer. Now, within reason, obviously, like it's so difficult, but I would like, somewhat of a perceived value to remain in here because, if a land law enacts that, the harshness, the reality is we're going to get rid of you and this is all we're giving you. Yet, you know, there's a greenhouse and there's the other perceived values of the person, it would be nice to, in their defense, have somewhat of a clause or at least something to indicate that you're not just going to run me over because of the amount of tax I pay or the situation that I'm in. So this is why I made that comment on our last meeting, and I went thus far to at least include this, because 2 points of view, you know, counselor, you know, administration versus membership. There could be different goals and ambitions, and you know, and we need to create a little bit of a guiding suggestion such as this, so you know, people can meet at least halfway. And I thought that it was important to include. That's up to the group, obviously, but I just like to share that, which hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Ty.
So
Is there?
yeah, for the perceived value thing, so I didn't see anything anywhere included in here with like a negotiation type stage.
Mhm.
Where because that's probably going to happen more often than not. If someone's coming to me saying, I'm going to take your land, or I want to use this piece, or blah 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 blah, right? Then I kind of just lost my track there. I don't know. I think can you understand what I
Yeah.
tried to say with just that little piece that I said there, because I just lost my whole track. But
Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying is like so far it's
Oh.
basically laid out that this is what we're gonna do when we decide that we're gonna take your stuff or
yeah,
your land, as opposed to
but
a
me, I'm going to say,
negotiation.
yeah, I'm going to say, no, my land's worth more than what you're telling me. So basically what I'm saying is, anytime that this situation is going to come up, unless it's a situation where the people are like, oh, great, that's awesome, I'll take that because maybe it's way more than they thought, or something, but you know, maybe not.
I can
So
understand that.
it's going to come to that. It's going to always 90% of the time come to that, is what I'm saying. If they're trying to take your land or my land, right, I'm going to say no. So that's going to be it's going to turn into something, right? Like, I mean, sure, they're going to say what they could say, but if that's my land, are they going to physically move me? You know, if I say, no, this is where I want to be, you know, or my mom had a teepee here when I was a kid, and that's why I chose this piece of land or something, you know, like I'm just saying, could be absolutely anything, but
Yeah. Well,
it's going to come to an argument or a type of going to court, or how do we deal with that?
yeah, I could see that as like if there was two lots of land, one had a small wetland and the other one had like a patch of berries. One person, like that wetland might actually have sweetgrass growing in it. That to me would be a perceived high value lot of land, whereas somebody else moving in there not knowing what was there or not even caring about sweetgrass would look at the wetland going, this is a waste of land because I can't even walk on it, and want to bulldoze it over kind of deal. So I can understand the difference between the perceived value there. And made a note.
So yeah, there would have
Definitely
to be
something that we're gonna have to come back to.
a negotiation of some sort, because the people are going to say, I believe this is what it's worth. They're going to go back to the framework and say, well, this is what we have to do, and then it's a negotiation stage, which I didn't see anywhere, or where like the member actually has a chance to even say that, you know.
That's what I think. That's why I think you should remove those words, but not limited to, because when you say not limited to those points that you made up there, that's saying that they can expropriate your land for any reasons. So that's why you're actually including those reasons up there. And so when you're saying not limited to, then you're saying you can add anything else you want. So I agree with Ty. And I do believe that there should be some, and I agree with Brad, because I do believe there should be room for negotiations in there, because you can't just expropriate it without negotiation. And even if you agree, Brad, to what they offer you, that's still a negotiation, because they're still having that conversation with you and you're still agreeing to that.
But for the member to say
So that,
no, and then move forward on it. Yeah.
So there's definitely room in this area to include some terminology such as the word perception, or at least acknowledge that and use negotiation at some level. And this here being a guiding document, you know, that will help us develop the actual land code. So definitely something we don't want to miss. Thanks, guys.
Okay. I made a comment about what you said, Terry, including the not limited to. I'm gonna look into that further. Kind of want to go back to it right now, but we'll get to it in a moment. Let's try to get through this because we are an hour and a half in and we only have about a half an hour left of our meeting. So, and we're almost.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I have to excuse myself again because my next appointment is at 1:45, and I'm going to grab myself a coffee, but I'll be here right until at 1:45.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I apologize. I've been being distracted entirely this entire meeting. I apologize for that.
Okay, so we're going to get into 16.11, neutral evaluation to resolve disputes. The resolution of disputes concerning the right of the Missanabie Cree First Nation to expropriate shall be determined by neutral evaluation in the same manner as provided for by Part 9 of the Framework Agreement. And the 60-day period referred to in the Framework Agreement shall be applied as appropriate in the circumstance by the neutral evaluator. My first question is, how is a neutral evaluator bound?
I was just gonna say that.
Agreement.
Neutral evaluation. Yeah, it must be a part of the framework or a part of that act.
Oh, 2 months seems appropriate and generous for a review. Resolution of dispute 60-day period referred to shall be applied. Well, aside from some questions, I don't see anything wrong with this piece. Anyone have any comments or questions about it? Or things we should look into?
What's the definition of neutral evaluation?
Yeah,
Mhm.
neutral
I
evaluator.
want to put that in the definition. I mean, that would, to me, that means third party.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Of
definitely.
no position to the First Nation, right? But that can be tricky too.
Yeah.
I would also revisit that 60-day. We need to discuss that 60-day period and what, if that's enough time for anyone, and what that 60-day period is.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. Like in the definitions,
Yes.
we have working day versus what's the opposite? Like, so there's working day, which means business days versus
Leisure.
Weekend.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I believe business days is just anything that isn't a weekend or a holiday.
right.
Yeah, I would definitely, if the framework agreement is saying that it's only a 60-day period, I think we might want to revisit that for sure and extend it.
I'll look at the some other, we can compare land codes here. I know that was brought up at the Elders Council, and that was originally when the project plan, in the project plan to compare codes. And Michelle started off with providing different land codes to every member of the subcommittee, but I don't think we've done our due diligence homework of actually comparing in the way that we should. It might be something that I have to take on, doing a comparison and creating that comparative cross all the different land codes that were provided to hit on different points like this. You know, what is the breadth of the notice in different land codes? Is it, 15
Tess.
days, 1 to 90, or?
If I could interrupt you for a moment.
Absolutely.
One of the key ideas about that comparison is to make sure that the land codes are close by. So the land codes close by, including like, I believe Missanabie Cree has one going, or Brunswick House, or both.
Missanabie as one.
Yeah, Missanabie, yeah, but basically land codes that are close by. So just to basically see what everyone else is doing close by. I believe that was the
So the
idea of
elders,
it.
the elders were specific to wanting to look at land codes that were in close proximity
Yes.
geographically.
Yes.
That's interesting. I would have thought it would be more about representative of the community, like around the same number, 500 or so. Same situation, like BNA is in the same situation. They've just started reserve creation as opposed to those in close proximity. But yeah, we could probably do like a bit of a cross-sectional, take some that are close, take some that are representative, and compare that way. I need a researcher to do that, but I'll take it on. Terry, it sounds like you're good at that.
I've got time.
Yeah, that's all I know, right?
Have to hire someone specifically
There's never enough time.
and compare
Yeah, when
any,
it
any
comes to
land
land
code,
code, you definitely need
compare-
something like that.
compare any oh damn it, I just had it on the tip of my tongue and then someone else talked, but that's okay. It'll come to me again. Amendments, compare amendments to First Nations like Garden River that have had existing land codes in the while, and see if, because they've had the existing land codes in there for years, if they've had amendments to them, maybe, because then what those amendments be, because as you live life and you come across issues, that's when you make amendments, because you've come up with something that's been problematic usually.
Right. That's a really good suggestion. Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
That is
just to
perceptive. Thank you.
interview those that maybe it can be done a little more quickly, as opposed to trying to compare all the amendments, just speaking to somebody who's been around through those amendments.
And then you might have to ask permission, or at least, acknowledge the First Nations that you're looking into, and they may be able to help give you some assistance and at least permission, respectfully.
Yeah, I'm going to be meeting with Garden River about cumulative impacts this afternoon, so maybe I'll bring that up. If I could interview them about their land code, find out who's maybe the closest in the governance committee, or we could maybe get the Missanabie's governance committee to interview a few of the different First Nations. I know Missanabie provided their land code to us, so I know they're open to discussion.
Cool.
Yeah, there's quite a few online at the resource center that have been, I guess, they've given permission to have theirs publicly posted so that everyone can see them and use them. I've got quite a few of them, and there's quite a few available online. Most of the ones that I looked at either had similar amount of members or were at a similar stage in their land code creation. But there was other ones that were just full out land codes, and some that were really comprehensive and somewhat old enough to be amended several times. Specifically, I think it was member 2 and Shawanaga.
Does it show the amendments? I don't think so, eh?
I don't recall seeing them in there. No, not specifically, like not separate.
Yeah.
I think they were just incorporated. Okay, so moving on, 16.12. Oh, is there any other conversations about 16.11?
I would just highlight neutral evaluator. Based on our conversation, it's a point to be highlighted and further examined, analyzed. Yeah, that way, I mean, we know by the recordings of these sessions, but in the minutes.
Say, I'm
16 point-
just gonna say Gee McGuetch, everyone, and I'll see you next time, and I'll be sure to revisit and visit some of these documents that we're discussing, be better prepared. So have a great day.
Miigwech, Terry. Have a good
Great
day.
to see you. Thank you for being here, Terry.
Thank you very much, Terry. Appreciate your help.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to suggest that the neutral evaluator might be something to be recognized under definitions, as like Tess brought up. It's an important point to revisit. Why not actually have a clear definition of what a neutral evaluator is in the definitions?
Yes.
It's probably like a
Yeah,
realtor.
I made a note of putting it in the definitions.
Well, it has to be one
16.12.
that's acquired without, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. 16.12, the resolution of the following disputes shall be determined by arbitration in the same manner as provided for in Part 9 of the framework agreement. So A, disputes concerning the right of a holder of an expropriated interest or license to compensation, and B, disputes concerning the amount of compensation. That's fairly.
See, I'm sorry to revisit neutral evaluator, because when we come up with a definition, if we have someone who's never been prepared to recognize what is valuable to First Nation people, whether it be cultural awareness training at some level, to bring someone in to show them the perceived value to that member, if they don't have any of that awareness, when looking back, go to 16.2 again, sorry, 1-2. Scroll down a little bit. When you start talking about dispute concerning the amount of compensation, that alone, that right there is a difficult position without a proper definition of who's evaluating it. Because the compensation from someone who's hired by the band administration, he came from Toronto, he's used to that real estate, he comes up here, he looks at the bush, he says 50,000. It's not necessarily going to be an accurate evaluation when it comes down to disputing concerns and so forth. So great point, Tess, by revisiting that neutral evaluator or somebody. Like we almost want to say like they need to be like a mediator at some level in between the member or whatever institution's property is being taken, and the band and council at that point.
And depending on possibly like what land or what building or what area is being, expropriated, it can again, I'm getting lost here, just hearing so much stuff coming out today.
No worries. It was just about putting cultural value on something. If someone's not
Mhm.
apprised to this information of our background and what
Yeah.
the forest means and so forth,
So
Well,
what
they
I'm
may be
hearing,
hard
hard to fair compensation packages.
so what I'm hearing is it's really important to make sure that this neutral evaluator has an understanding of cultural perceived value.
Yeah, and another
Very
suggestion is
much so.
it might be, there'll be obviously not just one neutral, because depending on the situation, it'd be a certain person, right? And not one direct person. If it's a business that's being taken, if it's a home that's being taken, if it's a cultural piece of land that's being taken, the right person's gonna be chosen to do that neutral middle grounds between the two parties, right? Because one person is not gonna have the same thoughts on those different situations, and so yeah, that person could be anybody that is appropriate for that specific one, right? Expropriation.
And one that's agreed to beyond just the hiring procedure by administration. You can't just have the administration hire somebody that they think is fit because they so happen to have a joint venture with MCBC, which obviously is a bias versus that which might be picked from a contributing member of our memberships, or like a sample of our membership brings an awareness, and then you can meet in some negotiation mediation regarding who's going to be the neutral evaluator, because neutral can be very much perplexed based on who's hiring them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so maybe we could put in the framework that Missanabie Cree doesn't use any of our own ventures or our own businesses to do that, because it can create nepotism sort of thing. You know what I mean? So it should be an outside party that has nothing to do with any of this.
Okay.
I believe that's part of what they mean over here, but again, I'm going to go into part 9 of the framework agreement, because that's like by neutral evaluator in the same manner as provided for. So I believe it's probably stated in part 9 of the framework agreement. I had the framework agreement open. I'm just, or it was.
Yeah, definitely highlight that and put a note to relook at that and revisit for sure.
Because yeah, that definitely matters. Said part 9. Yeah.
As we can see and understand, we're pretty much protecting, you know, the interests of our membership, and not just one generation. This is something that protects over multiple generations, right? So I feel
Yes.
like this is what we're trying to do. It's not create an argument, but protect the value of our lineage moving forward.
Okay, so how much more do we have here? Quite a bit. We still have, we're only about halfway done this part, and we are almost at our 2 hours. So I'm going to ask the group
Thought
if
we
we
were
want to
just-
continue
Go ahead.
working, or shall we end this and try to reschedule and continue on next meeting? So I'm going to ask who wants to continue this work right now, because
But
2
maybe
hours
I think
is.
we do need to reconvene. We went,
Mhm.
today was a repeat of what we went through last meeting. So I was a little surprised that we were repeating expropriation. It's good for with respect to Terry Fletcher being new and to bring her up to speed, but
Well,
where
there was
we-
other, we didn't have enough members to be able to go through this properly. Because it wasn't a working meeting, because there wasn't enough working members. So that's why we're doing this again, because this is the actual work.
okay. I guess, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we're just gonna have to reschedule. Okay, so is everybody available Tuesday, March the 1st, 2 weeks from today?
I should be.
Count me in. I'll make it happen.
Is anyone not available 2 weeks from today on March 1st at 9:30 a.m.? Okay, I will set the next meeting for March 1st at 9:30 a.m.
Possibly consider that tentatively, and because you're obviously going to have to reach out and be important to make sure that Terry and David are at this next one as well.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be sending out meeting minutes as soon as I get them, and I apologize for the meeting minutes from last meeting being late. I just forgot. Very sorry about that.
It's all good.
And I'll be sending out a information package with including like the framework agreement, expropriation act. I'll probably also take a hard copy or a soft copy of this, what we're the land code that we have right now, and add that to the package for those who don't have access to this land code.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
There was one other thing I wanted to discuss. Yes, the elders had asked for a comparison of the land codes, close by land codes and First Nations, what they're doing with their land codes, if they have any. And I was wondering if there's anyone in the meeting that'd be interested in putting that together.
What were the two, what were the reference? I remember Brunswick House was referenced as one of the close by. I had mentioned Metogamy. I'm not sure if there was anything else they were specifically, did they make mention? I forget. Did we
Basically,
agree
it's
on
just-
which ones they wanted to look at?
Not specifically, no, but like close by. So I'm thinking within like out 5 to 10 hours, a drive from Sault Ste. Marie and Missanabie. Just like within that area. And I wouldn't say all of them. I would focus specifically on Cree or Ojibwe, but pretty much all that anyways. I don't know, not too many. Like if there's 20, I don't think there is, but you know, you don't want to do all 20. I would say maybe 6 at the most to compare.
Well, I can definitely, you know, I'm one of the working members here. I'll volunteer to do that, and you know, we can work together if I have questions and so forth. But put me down for that as an action item. The one I was cross-referencing to begin with was Metogamy, so it's close enough, I believe, logistically. And we also have Sandpoint. Have a look at. They're a few years ahead of us comparative, and so is Brunswick House. I think Metogamy is quite a bit ahead of us. I would say 15 years. Whereas Brunswick House and Sandpoint are other good examples because they're only a few years ahead of us. So a little more of a relatable correlation between theirs and what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and I know Brunswick House is still in the writing portion, so they're where we're at.
Would that be something
Okay,
I would be
I
able
thought
to
they
help
were
with?
ahead.
I'm sorry, Ross, what was that?
Would that be something I would be able to help with?
That's a
Yes, you-
fabulous idea, Ross.
All right. So Ty and Ross. Awesome.
Hit my inbox, Ross. I'll see you there.
Okay, so maybe we'll try to give that about 2 weeks or so. And then we'll be able to provide it to the Elders Council. Maybe even just give like a little presentation to them. Okay. All right, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to stop the recording. Wherever that is. Stop sharing first. Okay.